Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Coffee with Casey. I'm here with Tom Clark, who's a financial advisor, and we'll talk about him in a minute and his spectacular record. On my right is Billy Samson, and it's pretty funny that I've had two great quarterbacks, the smartest guys I've ever known, be my quarterbacks. Your son was one of them, and he played for us in '94, and then Billy was the second one that came along, and I figured I better be nice to both of them because I'll probably be working for them someday. So, you know, I mean, nothing like having a 12-year-old that's smarter than you are, you know. But so today's an important show. We have Coffee with Casey, and it gives us time to set aside an hour or two, talk about the topics of the day, what's hot, what's not, you know, pricing houses or the marketing of today versus yesterday. But a portion of my clients are elderly clients. And I will say that elderly clients make the biggest mistakes. And at their age, they cannot afford to make mistakes. So there's an art of dealing with elderly clients, and we're going to talk about that today. It's a very serious thing. Tom is a financial advisor, and you know, the reason I asked Tom to come on is because I'm not the guy that goes out and shops for a good lawnmower. My neighbor was a great shopper, so whatever lawnmower he gets, I want just get two of them. So I respect what he goes out and does. Two of the smartest people I know use Tom and have used him forever as their financial advisor. So you know, that gives me good confidence that. And then Tom and I started talking about these issues I have with my clients and issues you have with your clients, and the synergy between, you know, the financial advisor section and how real estate, which is the biggest asset for most people, is distributed, is really a linchpin in this process. So very important what we're going to talk about today. Billy is here because as a financial genius he is, I stole him from a mortgage banking group, but this is right down Billy's alley, working with you know, assets, finances, how we work together on this whole thing. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can ask any questions
You
you
brought
want.
up a very important point when you said when people get older, or elderly, often make mistakes.
Yeah.
And the question I want to pose to the audience is why? Why do people end up making mistakes? And I have a premise to that.
You give me your premise, I'll give you my premise.
Sounds good.
Go ahead.
When people, when they get older, a lot of thoughts go into their minds that are worries, anxieties, and fears.
Yes.
And when the worries and anxieties and fears take over their thought process, it always leads to a mistake.
The thing about it is, I think it's a huge decision. It's very difficult. You have to be very compassionate. It doesn't matter what the kids want. And you know, what we're looking at is, what I see a lot is the parents are unable to take care of their home, whether the mental capacity or the physical capacity doesn't allow them to do that. The kids are concerned. The kids are pushing them to get out. The more they push, the more the parents dig in. They don't really have a place to go. So I know a lot of us go through this. If you're lucky enough to have parents, and I say that because I lost mine at when they were 60. I think I'm older than my father was when he passed. So if you're lucky enough to have elderly parents, don't think of it as a burden, think of it as a plus. You've had them for 20 or 30 years, more than some of us have, so enjoy. But here's how we need to take a look at this. First of all, they can't be pushed. They have to want to go somewhere. Right. So what you want to do, and subsequent shows to this, will be where do they go? Where do they want to go? They've got to want to go somewhere. You got a $1.2 million home in McLean Hamlet. Now, it's really only a $500,000 house. That's all it is. But if you put it in McLean, and you put it in the McLean School District, and you put it that close to DC, so you have a premium of hundreds of thousands of dollars you're paying for that house. So, you know, why not move to a $500,000 house and have $700,000 in cash that gives you the income you need? Because the one thing a lot of people worry about is running out of money, you know? So the first thing you have to identify is, what is the premium that I'm paying on this house? Vienna, for example, they're in a $600,000 house. Well, really, it's just a $300,000 house in the Vienna Elementary School District. And you're paying a premium for that. And you're paying a premium next to the Metro. And you're paying a premium to get on 66 and get to your employment centers of Arlington and DC. So when they don't have to pay that premium anymore, you kind of realize that, you know, it's really just a $300,000 house, but you're paying $600,000 to live here.
Sure.
Now, a lot of their friends are gone and may have moved into other places around. So I think it's important that before you tell mom and dad you should move out, so don't tell them what to do. Just start experimenting, take them out. Where do you want to go? Let's go you know how when we have kids and we go to college and we're looking for colleges for our kids to go to, take the parents out and say, let's just have an afternoon out. Let's just get out of the house. Let's take a drive. Let's look at some houses. Let's get them excited. And it's funny, the biggest motivator is to find something you really like and you really want. And so I think you gotta, when you go, hey mom, wanna go buy caca? Take her out to look at some places. Or dad, take them out to see places. I think that if they get excited about going somewhere.
Well, there's a spirit behind this. You sort of mentioned before, you have to congratulate Casey, who was telling us earlier that his 60th birthday last night.
Yeah, baby.
And it's all about family. And when you get into the area of family, there's unusual family dynamics. Now, sometimes families have dysfunctional families, but to the extent that one can have a culture of honor in their family, you support that culture of honor by giving them choices. If you try to force it, it's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. You have
Trust me.
You have to have...
Been there, done that.
You have to give them choices.
And that's why when you're dealing with elderly clients, it's a whole different ballgame. It is not like a normal sale, and it's just different. I've had people come to me and go, yeah, my mom's condo's been on the market for 3.5 years. Wait a minute. Stop just 1 second. Something's wrong if something's on the market. If your house is on the market in some areas for 60 to 90 days, there's something definitely wrong. So you have an agent that's not used to dealing with an elderly client, because elderly clients will dig in. I know what my house is worth. It was that 3 years ago. It might not be there now. So the one thing I will advise is when we sell an elderly couple and we're doing pricing and where we go from here and all that, all decision makers must be there. Okay, now you have a form here. And when we talk about decision makers, I want to go back to the first question I really have, and you brought this up. When you have elderly parents, there are two caretakers. There is a health caretaker, somebody taking care of them and all their health needs, and there's a financial caretaker, okay? There should be a financial caretaker, okay? Now, when I go to the doctor, I sign forms that let Carol and my family know that, you can disclose all my medical issues. Talk to me about what the elderly need to do in order to bring in their family on these decisions. In other words, if I'm a son and I call you and I want to know about my dad's stocks, can you tell me about my dad's assets or anything like that? How does that work? The relationship between the financial caretaker and the parent's financial advisor.
There's a change going on legislatively that's been taking for a couple of years, and it's coming out of the Department of Labor of all places. And the Department of Labor has been pushing these rules for fiduciary rules.
Okay.
And it's a good thing. The industry, the financial services industry, has been somewhat remiss over the years of not wanting to take on fiduciary responsibilities, because it increases their responsibility.
A liability.
Exactly. And so they're all upset about that in many cases, but it's one of those things where I think the principle of increasing financial advisors' level of fiduciary responsibility is a good premise. How that works itself out is...
Do all financial advisors have a fiduciary responsibility to their clients?
No.
Do stockbrokers have a fiduciary responsibility?
Most of them don't. And
how do you know if they do or don't?
Well, you can ask them to begin with.
Okay.
And it's interesting because a lot of this legislation was pushed out of the retirement area with 401ks and they were IRAs or retirement plans, and started, I think, in that process, but then it get extended over to non-qualified money as well. It started on the qualified place because the Department of Labor was requiring anybody who's a financial advisor to a plan to support a fiduciary standard. And they actually have this other, if the advisor was not going to go to fiduciary standard, he can order what they call a secondary report, which says that he had the owner of the plan, let's say the plan administrator, had to sign off that it was not in the best interest of the client
Nice.
right? So I mean, it's like, who would ever sign an agreement?
A document like that.
A document like that.
Right.
So it pushed the issue. You want to have sign a document that's not in the best interest of the client, or you're freeing them up, you're waiving that,
Right.
or do you have to do a fiduciary standard? It's pushing the whole industry into that role. Now, how that's supposed to distill further is, that was at the beginning of the legislation, the qualified area. Now it's getting to the point where broker-dealers in the financial services industry are being put into a place where, for the elderly,
Right.
and those particular
Qualified
people-
clients, right? Yeah.
Well, qualified, the term qualified really refers to
Millionaires and
retirement.
people that make more than what?
Well, those are accredited people.
Okay.
The term qualified really refers to retirement
Retirement
plans.
plans.
Non-qualified is non-retirement plan money. But whether it's qualified plan money or non-qualified plan money, now we're talking at the client level with the elderly.
Right.
And you have early onset of dementia, Alzheimer's, just diminished mental capacity. Or even if they're doing quite well, like 60, you're still in good shape.
I'm still that good.
Right, but,
At Murphy's last night, I wasn't doing that good.
but suppose you were in an accident
Right.
and you were into a coma.
Uh-huh.
If you're a financial advisor, suppose Kevin, your son, calls me up.
Right.
And he says, my dad's in a coma, right?
Right.
I need to ask you some questions about his finances.
Right.
There's a particular form which used to be a shared information form.
Right.
Now they've increased the level of that to make it have fiduciary teeth to it, so to speak, or substance to it. This form I was showing here is a trusted contact authorization.
Right.
And it's a form that
So this is the same form that I signed for my medical release, I need to sign for my financial release.
well, there's similarities to it, obviously
Right.
it's different.
Same kind of thing.
Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an increased responsibility, it's an increased fiduciary level of responsibility to,
How much, so there's different phases you and I talked about our elderly parents going into the 4 phases of dementia and onset Alzheimer's and full-blown Alzheimer's and all that stuff. At what point are they not capable of authorizing contact authorization?
That's a very interesting point, it's a very sticky point.
Yeah.
Because you have these legal issues.
Right.
Which you really talk to elderly care attorneys or when
Okay,
that point is.
I understand.
But then you also
We'll get
have-
one of those too.
Well, you also have a medical.
Yeah.
You have a medical question. For example, I had one of my clients who was literally a rocket scientist. He's a guy who developed, one of the head people at DARPA,
Mm-hmm.
Defense Applied Research Organization, and he developed the Global Hawk, was the unmanned, aircraft.
Okay.
So the guy was smart.
Yeah.
And by the time he was getting about 78 or 79, he started getting decreased dementia, not dementia, they'd say
Mental capacity.
mental capacity, correct. And so his wife took him to a doctor, and there are specialists in this, where they'll test you for where your capacity is.
Right.
And they had tested 35 questions, and he could not answer 15 correct.
Okay.
When they asked one of the questions on the radio,
Yeah.
and they gave you 5 different words,
Yeah.
and you were supposed to remember those 5 words
Oh,
5 minutes
okay.
later.
Yeah.
I was struggling with myself with that question.
Note to self, don't take the 35 thing test. So, but the question is,
Well,
at what
if he
point,
failed that test,
if he fails
then
it,
the doctor can certify that he's
Right.
does not have.
mental capacity to handle his financial affairs and needs a
Correct.
financial.
Correct.
person.
So then the next point is, who does?
Who does?
Yeah, right. Now, this form is only just for information purposes. This is not a durable power of attorney, or it's not a trustee form.
Right.
So the other legal documents that come into play, and we'll probably bring an attorney here.
Yeah, we will.
So it's either the estate planning attorney or the elderly care attorney. Typically, it's the estate planning attorney who will work with the family to say, you need a durable power of attorney, and
Right.
then what triggers that.
Right.
Now, your other sticking point is, you really need to sign that durable power of attorney while
When
you're
you have still-
Exactly. When you have all your marbles, so to speak, there. And if you don't, then somebody could argue that in court, you've already lost your marbles, now you're signing off.
Got it.
That's a problem.
So the earlier the better, they need to at least now, this lets you contact them.
Right.
But the power of
Sure.
attorney lets them actually work on your behalf. And they have a fiduciary
Correct.
responsibility now outlined in this new
Correct.
law that they've come out with.
Yes.
Let me just say one thing. What we're talking about here is the evolution of whatever. There's an evolution in real estate. I mean, today's real estate is not what their parents were used to, and your parents were used to. It's just different. The internet is different and all this. And now we've got financial rules contacts, power of attorneys, trustees.
Sure.
And this has evolved. And the rules for fiduciary have evolved, okay? So it really takes a serious participation by the children that understand the evolution of how today is working to explain it to their parents who trust them. And, you know, when we sit down and we go over whatever, you should never, ever talk to just the wife or just the husband or just the kids. Or everybody has to be briefed on what's going on. Because if one person doesn't have the information that these people have, then it's a real problem. So
Yeah, and a lot of financial planning meetings we do with clients, we really request, in some cases we can't demand because it's not something that you can force on clients.
Right.
You want at least the wife there.
Right.
And so that's if the client, and sometimes it's the reverse, you want the husband there.
Right.
But you want the spouse there. So that both spouses are tracking what these decisions are.
Right.
And then at some point, there's a transition where they're gonna bring in another generation.
Right.
A lot of these conversations we may have.
So you're talking about husband and wife first, then bring in the next generation to start, you know, start going over exactly where they are and planning. But the problem is that once they start getting 20 out of 35, it's too late, right? I mean, they got to get a power of attorney earlier than that. And
Yeah,
meet with the,
you know, I often find that people who are wealthy and already have assets tend to go to the direction of at least creating trusts.
Yeah.
And so then you have the successor trustees. Everyone can set up at least a revocable living trust.
Right.
And the revocable living trust is, the trustee is usually the client. But then the client names a successor trustee.
Right.
And that successor trustee takes over the decision-making authority and all the...
For the estate.
For the trust.
Right. Which is
well,
what the estate is in the trust.
Well, typically, again, the estate can often be larger. For example, somebody might have a home that's jointly titled.
Okay.
With a spouse, and that's not in the trust.
Okay.
So there are other assets outside the trust.
Right.
But you could put everything in the trust.
Yeah.
And if you do your estate planning, what your the preferred attorney is going to recommend is a pour-over will.
Right.
Because one of the other gaps is you create the right documents.
Yeah.
Then you don't put the assets in there.
Right.
Or you miss a few.
Yeah.
Or you
And they're outside of it.
They're outside of it. So
Yeah.
then, if, for example, if the house is outside, it's joint titled, it goes to the spouse, which
Right.
is typically fine.
Right.
But then what happens when the spouse gets older?
Right, right. Well, so that's, I mean, the first step that we do when we're talking about, you know, selling somebody's house is, you know, who is exactly, because we get it post-death a lot. So we're dealing with a lot of the 50-somethings after the parents have passed.
Right.
Now they're dealing with the house. And sometimes it takes a while to get the, their ability to sell the house. You know, they got to go through certain stages.
Right.
So, you know, you really have to prepare before that this house is as a trustee. You have trustees.
You bring up a
to
very
handle.
interesting point, because if if the titling of the house starts early in their lives as jointly titled, which most happens, and then one of the spouses dies, now it's in an individual name.
Right.
Now it's going to pass according to will,
Right.
unless they put it into trust.
Trust.
So if it's going to pass according to will, it's
Right.
going to go through a probate process.
Right, which is a problem.
Right. The word probate comes from a Latin word probare, which means to prove. And so there's a delay, there's a time and a delay. There's three things that happen that clients don't like in probate. One is the time delay. Two is the cost.
Right.
Three, which for wealthy people is a big issue, is lack of privacy.
Yeah.
Because it's posted on the courthouse door, so to speak. Anybody has any objection,
Any charges or anything coming this way.
coming this way, you know,
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Right. So.
All right. So basically, we've
So if you
got
have a
financial
good-looking
assets.
wife, by the way,
Huh?
if you get a good-looking wife and you
Leave her $1 million home,
Yeah.
sometimes you may have a suitor
Yeah.
who finds out that the wife has this house.
Right. Nice.
Anyway.
All right. Cut that part out. Cut that part out now.
No, so
But I get it. I guess what I'm doing is right now we're trying to say, okay, guys, there's a couple of mistakes I see all the time. One is we got to go through probate, and as opposed to having it in a trust or a power of
which
attorney.
avoids it.
So
power
the
of
trust or power of
attorney doesn't avoid probate, the trust does.
trust. So it should be put in a trust.
Correct.
Okay. So let's get that in a trust. Let's get the power of it, or at least the contact information form signed for your parents, so at least you can communicate with all their financial advisors.
As a real estate broker, and you say you're dealing with the next generation, the
Yeah.
50-something person. If that property had been put into trust before the second spouse passed,
Right.
they would have completely avoided the probate process.
Right, and it's just a trustee.
And that 50-year-old, if he was the trustee, could execute the sale.
Right, and to be honest with you, that's probably 50-50 of what we do. Sometimes, you look at it and go, what have we got here, Do we have a trust, or do we have to go through probate? And then it's an issue. Because homes aren't meant to be vacant. I mean, that home is vacant for quite a while. Anything could happen. Anything could happen to that home. So, this is all about preparing, okay? Now, the one thing that people are concerned the most about, Tom, is that I see is running out of money.
Right.
And I mean, the parents have, this is a standard deal. I got a $600,000 house that's paid off. I got a couple $100,000 in stuff, okay? And now it's time to move to an assisted living care, which is $12,000 a month, which means in 5 years I'm out of money, or 6 years I'm out of money, or 7 years I'm out of money. The fear of, especially the depression babies, I mean, we're still dealing with depression babies. These people, the 90-somethings, grew up in the depression. So they're always in fear of, a quick story, my father-in-law gave me a styrofoam cup with a plant in it, tomato plant. Now this styrofoam cup was like, I don't know, 12 years old? It's a nickel. 12-year-old styrofoam cup. He gives me the tomato plant, he goes, I'm gonna want that cup back. Now I swear to God, this is a true story, right? I broke the freaking cup. I broke the damn cup. It's a 12-year-old nickel cup. He doesn't want a new one. He wants his cup back, And that's just their mentality, and that's not, it's, we're just different.
I had a client, very wealthy client.
Yeah.
Right? Big bucks. Big developer, and
5 different companies he had. He would not go to Starbucks for a cup of coffee for $3 when he'd go to 7-Eleven and get one for $1.50.
It's just the way people are. That's why they have money in the bank.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You show me a guy that's driving an old car, I'll show you a guy with pretty good money in the bank, But, so, anyways, we're dealing with, I forget where I was headed with that. We were going.
The 50-something person who's
Yeah.
taking care of.
So they're in fear of running out of money.
Right.
The kids, well, kids, I'm 60. The kids.
You're a kid.
I'm a kid. 40 now.
Yes.
I think we declared yesterday that 60 is the new 40, so all you 60. I'm going back. I'm going back to compete. Now I'm a little smarter, a little uglier, a little grayer, but I'm going to take care of that gray, and I'm going to go back after these kids. But anyways, the 50-somethings are also concerned about having enough money in the estate to handle their parents and their assisted living and their care and all that. And it's a concern. One thing that you told me about, Tom, and this is a little too late for the parents, but not for the 50-somethings, okay? And that is long-term care. You explain long-term care insurance or long-term care, whatever that was. I want you to explain briefly on, because that's what when you have earning capacity, where you can put something aside, that kind of ensures that when that time comes, you're not in the same position. So just explain the long-term care that you explained to me.
Sure. People, when they start to do financial planning, are usually focused on retirement planning and education planning for their kids.
Right.
The thing they forget about is long-term care. What happens after I'm 65?
Right.
Typically, or after I retire.
What happens when you get the signal? Want to go buy my car?
Well, there's that transition where they're when their earning in lifestyle ends.
Yeah.
They're now in the unearned area, but they're
Right.
healthy.
Right.
But about 10 years prior to dying or passing,
Yeah.
there's that place there which you talked about before about the diminished mental capacity.
Right.
But there's also things that start to happen with them physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a term in the industry called ADLs, which refers to assisted daily living activities.
Okay.
That has evolved also because long-term care was to provide for people who couldn't eat, couldn't dress themselves, couldn't cook,
Right.
couldn't do a lot of the physical things that you need to be around. But we're seeing about a third of the population, when they get to that period, it's typically over 65, but they haven't died yet,
Right.
right? Because people are living longer.
Right.
So it may be between 80 and 90.
They're playing 17 and 18.
Yes.
They're coming up the back nine.
On the golf course, exactly. But that,
I'm just teeing off 16, by the way. Right behind him.
I thought you turned the corner.
Yeah, I made the turn a long time ago, man. I'm definitely teeing off at 16.
Okay.
I hope.
So that period in there where maybe they are physically healthy, but they don't have the cognitive diminish where they're starting to lose
Right.
their mind. And they just simply need care.
Yeah.
Now, people don't understand that these ADLs, which is the underlying definition, or when you don't do them, is when long-term care starts.
Right.
It's usually 2 out of the 6 assisted daily livings you cannot do.
Okay.
You need a caretaker.
So there's 6 things you can do, and you can't do 2 out of the 6. Then you start pulling down on your long-term care.
Well, then you start qualifying for long-term
Qualifying,
care.
okay.
If you have a long-term care insurance policy, that's what will kick in. You apply for it, it takes 90 days. After they agree to it, then you start
pulling down on that money.
That's right.
But that's money that stays with you when you are unable to take care of yourself.
Correct.
And it's over and above the home and the assets they got sitting around. Now you can pull down cash, which, and I don't want to go over expenses and how much and the benefits. They can talk to you about that or talk to their financial advisor about that. But this is, if more of the 80-somethings had the long-term care, there wouldn't be so much burden on everybody. Not burden, but anxiousness about, am I going to run out of money?
Right.
They know, we've got care. Oh my gosh, this is going to be expensive. I live this with Carol's, dad, and
Sure.
you go through it. It's like, this is what you need to do. You're going through it with your grandmother. You went through it with your grandmother and your grandfather. So, we all have, everybody.
Sure.
We all, if you're lucky enough to have older parents, then you're going to have to go through this.
Right.
So
now, if they have the long-term care,
Right.
you're in a one position.
Right.
And suppose they don't have the long-term care.
Well, they don't, and I'll say this, I'd say 99% of them probably do not. What I'm talking to now is the 50-somethings that say, you don't want to be a burden on your kids. They don't want to be a burden on us.
Right.
So, by us at 50-something taking out the long-term, when I hope I'm at my peak of earning, while you're at that peak of earning, you can put that away so that when the time comes and you're 75 or you're 80, you have a built-up nest egg where the people don't have to worry about it. You can just pull down on that,
Well, that also has changed,
Yeah.
you can imagine. Years ago, go back 20 years ago, the insurance industry was offering indemnity plans for long-term care.
Right.
Indemnity plans were plans where you pay somewhere between $2,000, maybe as much as $5,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they would give you benefits, usually some kind of day rate. Baseline was $200 a day, and it rolls up from there.
Right.
Cost of living rise rolls up from there, so on and so forth. The problem with that developed is that the actuarial assumptions
Mm-hmm.
or that were used at the time were way.
Yeah. People outlived them, didn't they?
They thought people.
I'm not going at 80. I think 90 is the new 70, by the way.
Well, not only
I do believe
not
that.
only people were living longer,
Yeah.
but the time period that needed long-term care was stretching
longer.
out.
Right.
And then the cost of long-term care were rising.
Rising.
So you had these economic factors. So many of the people that offered, or many of the insurance companies, won't name names, that were in the long-term business got out
Right.
because they couldn't afford it anymore.
Right.
The ones that were left in had what they called in the industry guaranteed renewable contracts.
Okay.
Now that may sound like a really nice term, guaranteed renewable.
Right.
What I ain't telling you is that they can raise the rates.
Right.
We guarantee you renew it, but we're gonna take the
We're gonna
price.
jack you up.
Fleece you, yeah.
Well, they're going to have to because they're losing their money at the price they were at.
Exactly, they're going out of business, the insurance company's going out of business, these businesses, they're not making profits, they're raising the rates left and right.
So we're talking long-term care versus
Well,
the term that you just
other
used.
industries that came up,
ADL.
Huh?
Was it 80?
No, what's the, you just
Indemnity.
said? Indemnity, so not indemnity, long-term care.
And there was 3 problems with the indemnity problems that I had clients go through full cycle, because I've been in business for 35 years.
You're an old guy, man.
Sorry,
Hey.
I'm older than you,
I'm
I'm
not-
older.
Yeah, that's good. I'm right behind you.
So the
You're
one
putting on 16, by the way. You're putting out, I'm just teeing off.
So I found 3 things that turned me off the indemnity plans. One was they kept raising rates. I had one client, they raised rates 69%.
Yeah.
Sounds like my healthcare.
Yes. It's very similarly related to that. But this was happening. So raising the rates was pervasive across the industry, is causing a problem, particularly when you get older, because the people who were buying the indemnity plans were buying them when they were, let's say, 55, and now
Right.
they're 75.
Right.
They don't need a long-term care yet. They paid it for 20 years.
Yeah.
So they don't want to raise rates, and they're in a period of time where they're not earning money anymore. So it's unearned income that has to pay for it. Second thing was that this dementia problem,
Yeah.
what we're mentioning, or the diminished mental capacity, guess what happens? They forget to pay the premium. So you pay the premiums for 20 years, 22 years, then you forget to pay it,
You're
what
out.
happens? You're out. The third thing was, not everybody, after 20 or 25 years of paying into it, needed it.
Right.
Some of them just died, and they didn't have to use the long-term care.
Right.
So they paid it for all this period of time and didn't use it. So I looked at that and I said, you know, there's got to be a better way. And fortunately, there is. I've come around to realizing that asset-backed long-term care policies
Yeah.
are a much better way to go.
Okay.
Because you can target how much you want to pay into it.
Mhm.
$50,000, $100,000, whatever that number is, and your premium never rises.
Right. So it's for 10 years, you pay X amount of dollars per year,
Yeah.
and then when you're done, you have a pot of money, and that's what you have to draw down on when you get long-term.
And it grows, and oftentimes you could
So it's
target.
a 10-year deal, it's not ongoing, with rates going up and all the rest of that stuff.
Rates doesn't go up, it also has a death benefit component to it.
Right.
So if you don't need a long-term
Right.
care for some reason.
And you die, you get cash
You
on
get
it.
it back.
That's good.
Suppose you have an emergency.
Yeah.
Draw it.
Yeah, you can draw down, you could take the money you put in,
Yeah.
either 80% or 100% of the money you put in.
Yeah.
Let's say it's not a long-term care issue, let's say
Right.
it's a health issue,
Right.
but you need, $50,000, or you
Right.
need $100,000.
Right.
It actually has cash value in it, that's why it's
Oh,
asset
okay.
backed.
Yeah.
So you can
Nice.
take the money out in an emergency, you lose your long-term care, but you're now in
Still,
a.
you have the money to take
So
You
it.
need to
money.
do it, you need to do it.
Whereas you put in $5,000 a year for.
So it's
20
kind of like the
years.
lottery, you get X amount of dollars per month, or you can just get a lump sum. You're talking about borrowing a lump sum and then
You
you're
can
done.
borrow the lump sum, you're done, but if you take it out as it was originally designed, for a $100,000 plan, you can often get 3 times the amount of that in tax-free benefits, paid over a period of 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
You're not gonna get the lump sum in the long-term care payout.
Right.
You get a monthly payout,
Right.
but it's often 300%. However, the longer it takes, like for example, take yourself, you're 60 now.
Yeah.
Let's say you go for 10 years.
Let's call it 20. No, I'll put it for 10
You pay
years.
for 10 years.
But let's say I
You
don't need it for 20. Yeah.
So if you set it up at
It
$100,000, it grows. You immediately, when you establish it, it'll be about 3 times
Right,
that $100,000.
Right.
Even though you only put in 10,
right,
right? But let's say it comes, you don't need it till you're 80.
yeah,
Now that's 20 years later.
yeah,
Now that 300 will actually compound, and maybe it's worth 450 or 500.
yeah.
Now you're getting a lot more money. Now you're getting 4.5, 4, 5 times
Okay.
the money out, instead of just 3, which you were guaranteed when you started.
All right. So that's how we can take one problem that we see a lot and avoid that by doing the early stuff. Now let's talk about, when we're young, we buy things with equity, and now we're old, and now we're not earning income. Now we need to turn our assets into
Distribution.
income,
Right.
distribution. Now we need to live on our income.
Right.
And let me give you a problem and a solution. So, and we talked about a client. The client needs $10,000 a month, and the client has $8,000 a month in income, and yet he's sitting on an asset over here, and he's sitting on an asset over there. There's a short-term solution of selling some assets, and then there's a long-term. Okay, let's say you got a lot of land. It's going to take a long time to do that, but you have a house with something. Da 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 da. Sell that. You get that to cash, which is a short-term solution that could go into income that offsets that, right?
Right.
So I'm just going to tell everybody this. I've heard these stories, and to be honest with you, it makes my blood boil that people will tell me, well, my mom's condo has been on the market for 3 years. Well, this house has been on for 2 years. This has been on for 2.5 years. This has been on. This is crazy. These people need money. They don't need trouble. They don't need a problem. They need to get rid of it. They need to sell their assets. So if you need to find a realtor that knows what the heck they're doing, or we'll find somebody that knows what they're doing, that gets something priced correctly and sold. Nothing should be on the market for more than, and I know we're in a good area, but for God's sakes, I sell $1.5 million houses in 30 days, and there's a huge inventory of those houses on, but still, if you price it right, it's going to sell. So anybody that's talking about holding on to these real estate assets and for 2 or 3 years, when that, these people don't have that much time left.
Right.
And they're concerned about not getting an income, which is really crazy. Sell the asset, turn it into income, and have that income offset. So they don't have to worry about it. I mean, for somebody to be worrying about $2,000 a month when they're sitting on $1 million or $2 million or $3 million of assets is ludicrous. Sell what you have to sell, get a qualified realtor that knows how to deal with elderly or financial advisors and what the rules are. Sell the asset, turn it into cash, get the income from the cash, and move on. But the last thing you have to do is, it just kills me that, and I guess when you started off by saying, they have anxiety, they have fear, they have all this, and I get that, but it shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't be like that. They've worked their whole life, they've raised their family, they've got a nice house, they paid it off, they've got cash in the bank, whether it's $1 million or $2 million or $200,000. They should relax. And especially when you have a situation where you have assets, stop, fighting or arguing. Sell the asset, turn it into cash, live on the income, right?
Yep, I had a client that,
15 years ago who had prostate cancer.
Why'd you look at me when you said that? You just looked down at me and said you got prostate cancer.
I just looked at your prostate.
Don't look at me, man. I'm healthy and strong like water. You're looking at me. Don't be looking at me like that. You see him cut his eyes at me when he said, he goes, you got prostate cancer.
I didn't think he was going to tell you that you prostate.
he asked me what kind of cancer.
As Bobby would say, awkward.
So,
Anywho.
Where were you?
Where were you?
You had a client with prostate cancer. Keep your eyes up here. Eyes here.
His wife, he was trying to plan out his life, and he said, I only have 5 years left, if that, because he metastasized.
Yeah.
So he was concerned about it, and he said, I ran the numbers, and this was a very smart guy coming out of the Foreign Service area. He lived in Vienna, actually. He said, I did the calculations, and he was actually going through a liquidation strategy.
Right.
Where he says, I calculated that if I took my assets and I just paid them down, I might live 7 years. And so I need $10,000 a month was the number, and he only had about $1.5 million. So we had to go in and say, what would you propose to do? So we go through a normal thing that any financial planner worth of salt would do, is start with what's your inventory of income. Well, income first. Where's the source of income? Social Security, 401k, an IRA, pension plan. List those things out, any non-qualified funds that are there. And then typically, the biggest asset the client has is real estate.
Why do you think you're sitting here, Tom?
Exactly. That's why you invited me to come here.
It's not for your looks. It's not because you're a charming breakfast. Lord only knows.
But anyway.
But that is true, and there is a synergy between financial advisors and the elderly and their real estate assets that they need to be thoughtful about. But
because you need to monitor, once you know you're shy on the income side,
right,
then you look over to see what the inventory of the assets are,
right.
And what are those assets that are income producing and what are not, and then how can you monitor, what's the highest optimal asset in the illiquid ones,
right,
that you could monetize to produce income out of it.
Right.
Because the next step is when you go past the earned income phase of your life and you're into the unearned income, now you're actually moving from...
Which is everyone's goal.
Yes. It's moving from accumulation...
Assets up, debt down, income coming in. Got
moving
it.
from accumulation to distribution.
Right.
Now, when you're accumulating, particularly retirement plans, one of the mathematical principles that works really well for you is dollar cost averaging.
Okay.
Which is in somebody's paycheck, they're taking
A little bit of money out every month. And so if the market's going up or down, you're buying in at high and low points. So dollar cost averaging is actually helping you mathematically. The problem switches in the math when a person starts to need income every month.
Right, now you're pulling, yeah.
Now you're pulling down.
Right.
And in that pulling down process, if you're liquidating capital while you're pulling down, you're probably gonna
It's
run out
getting
of
worse.
money.
Yeah,
You're
you're
gonna
running
run
out
out
of
of
money, that's the problem.
Right? So you don't wanna be selling off assets.
Right.
And so, you have to find
ways of developing income streams that you can live off of that are greater than your need for the income itself. So if you need $10,000 a month, you're probably gonna have to get income streams around maybe at least 12, maybe 14, 15 after you pay taxes.
Right.
And then
And
10.
bring it down.
So those are the kind of dynamics that go into the planning.
What do we have, what are we gonna squeeze out, how do you get what you need? And you know, here's the other thing, and again, I'm gonna go back to are we allowed to talk about people, clients and all that stuff? The
Not
7,
names.
8,000?
No names.
No names. Let's say I have 10,000
Talk about
and
yourself.
I need 8,000. I have 8,000, I need
I
10,000.
won't look at your crotch anymore. if you
All right,
say
thank you.
kids.
So I'm living in a $1.2 million house that has a $700,000 premium on it. And when I say premium, I mean it's that expensive because it's, yeah,
Close to DC, schools.
you know,
Metro.
that house, you and I go out in Gainesville and we can buy that house for $500,000
Well, that gets into the issue.
and it's newer
And you add the 700 to your,
to your income,
Right.
and now you're producing income on the 700,000, and your expenses are lower and your income is higher.
Right.
And it's just because you cashed in the premium on where it is you're currently living and buying something that's.
A lot of people don't realize the carry cost of living in expensive areas, even just the taxes.
Taxes alone.
I've got clients paying $15,000, $20,000
Well, it's,
a year.
that house is, I guarantee you that house is $15,000 in taxes a year.
Yeah.
Where instead of $5,000, so there's $10,000 a month in taxes.
Right.
I mean, $10,000 a year in taxes, so yeah, you're looking at $800 a month.
just in time.
So again, I guess you
Even if
can
you pay off your
close,
mortgage,
yeah,
you have that issue.
You
And
do
the
have
other
that.
issue is, people don't realize older homes have more repairs and
Right.
upkeep.
Yeah.
You can easily
Roof,
spend $10,000 to
systems.
$15,000.
well, again, that's another one of the premiums. We buy a house for all the kids,
Right.
and then the kids are gone. And now you are in a bigger house that you don't need that much. So the premium is not only for location, schools, employment centers, neighborhood, you know, it's also size.
Right.
Do you need 3,500, or is it better for you to be in a 1,200 square foot, elderly community with a main level master bedroom and all that?
Are you saying size doesn't matter?
I'm saying size doesn't matter. Don't look at me. The next one we're gonna do is the breakfast is being in. I'm gonna sit across the table. He's gonna be over there, and I'm gonna be over here.
You're hovering on.
Guys, freaking me out. But anyways, where the hell was I, man? All I'm saying is that the part of that premium, you need to figure out what the premium is. A 1,700 square foot house or 1,400 square foot house versus a 3,500 square foot house, a McLean address as opposed to a Gainesville or Haymarket address, especially where it's an elderly community where everybody can live and be comfortable in. And they do have community centers, and they do have events, and there are people that are more their age that they can deal with, and things like Leisure World. And I will promise there's a couple people that we are going to bring in here. I don't know how much time I have left. Good, we're good.
20 minutes.
There's a couple people we are going to bring in here as we go along. One is going to be a person that comes in and helps people organize their house and get that whole thing sold. Right. The other is assisted living, Leisure World, professionals that work with clients that are going to that 50 and over, like Pam works with a lot of them. We have agents in here that work with the people that are looking out in Gainesville and Haymarket and that 50-something communities, and the Leisure World.
Over age 55.
Yeah, over age 55. So yeah, everybody in there is over 55. So there is that, what we would call the next phase. Where do you go after your family home that you're comfortable, you know, living in with other people? It's not assisted living, it's the in-between. It's family home, you know, that one level unit, you know, in a over 55 community, and then it's on to, you know, assisted living in Sunrise. And we will have somebody out here from Sunrise, or the Faders group or something like that to talk about that, you know, that kind of phase. Right now we're kind of into the financial side of this, of how you deal with financial advisors, you know, how we communicate with them, what documents do you need right now, how to get your house in trust. So in summary, get your house in trust, get a contact authorization from your parents, get a power of attorney eventually before they become mentally, and before they hit that level. And I don't know what age that is. Maybe it's 70, maybe it's 75. I don't know when that really starts. You know, some friends of ours have started at 70.
Much age specific as much as
Person specific.
yeah, person specific.
Well, how do you know, you know,
I guess you gotta look at your life with what you.
whether you put on city miles or country miles? Yeah, yeah, I put on city miles. Yeah,
So you should probably get this form.
pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kevin knows. I got what's in the wallet.
Yeah.
But yeah, you need to start getting everything prepared, all your documents in order, and then we will have questions from people that have parents and they're in that situation where it's like, well, you should have, could have, would have, but I didn't. So now where do we go from here? You know, let's say that we have a parent of diminished capacity. Can they enter into a trust? Can they put their stuff in a trust for a kid even in that, at that phase?
It gets to be illegal.
So we just told, okay, so we're gonna have to leave that to a state attorney that we'll have around here. Because the question is, oh my gosh, my parents are getting old, we are gonna, you know, something could happen.
Yeah.
We do need to get this house in a trust, but what if they don't have the mental capacity to enter into a trust?
Right.
You know, now what? Now how to transfer that asset or make it easier for the, is it a will, is it, you know, I mean, but even at that, are they mental capacity? These are all legal questions that we'll get into the state
legal
attorney.
issues, and they're also going to, your attorney is gonna have to take some advice from the doctor.
Yeah,
So the doctor, there's some testing that has to go on, there's a medical component to this and a legal component to it.
right.
But one of the things I wanted to mention to you, the people who want some information about these key roles and responsibilities.
Right.
We have this form that we can send out to them that
Right.
discusses the role of the executor, the role of the trustee, the role of a corporate trustee, the role of the power of attorney, advanced healthcare directives, the role of guardians. In other words,
Right.
the different roles that people can play.
And these are the new guidelines that are out?
Those are just descriptions
Okay.
of what those roles are.
Okay,
Not the new guidelines as to the trusted contact. We can
Okay.
give them information on that as well.
you want trusted contact. So anyways, so here is
Just
the,
information.
how you get in touch with Tom. And Tom's in Vienna. And it's Blue Ocean, is that?
Blue Ocean Partners.
Blue Ocean Partners,
Yeah.
over on Pine?
Yep, Pine
Over
Street,
on Pine
Pine
Street.
Pine Street. We're right down from Westwood Country Club
Right.
and right behind Anita's Restaurant on
Okay.
Maple Avenue.
And if you need to get in touch with Tom, then you can just ricochet over at caretakers.com, and I'll forward it on to Tom. So if you need some help or some advice on stuff like that, then you can just call Tom in. Okay.
The one question that I had is you keep bringing up the $10,000 a month. Is that like a standard number that you guys see, or?
You mean $10,000 a month to live on?
Yeah, right. And what does that take care of? You know, as
Well,
well
it's hard to think because there's
for people to plan.
people who want to move out of this area typically will not need $10,000 a month.
Right.
But if they want to stay in this area, that's usually a middle class to upper middle class
Lifestyle. Yeah.
It's consistent with their lifestyle. So these are people who were earning typically higher than that amount of money while they were earning it.
Right.
They were 150 or north of that. And they feel they needed that to maintain the lifestyle that they want to have.
Mm-hmm.
There are places you go down to Florida or places outside of this area,
Right.
which are much less expensive than the Carolinas sometimes.
Yeah.
But this area, as you know, is a very high expensive area to live in.
Which brings up another point, which is community. What community do you want to be with?
Yeah.
Most people want to be around where their children are.
Right.
So if their children are in this area, right,
Right.
they want
Stay within an hour or so.
to stay around here.
Right.
somewhere.
Well, and again, that's why, you find an area that's within a half hour's drive. So, they will have around, but I guess as things go on, their friends leave.
Right.
And they go to Florida or South Carolina, or they may not have the same friends in this area. And, it's funny, when I used to coach, O'Connell, coached at O'Connell, and the kids are like, I don't want to go to O'Connell, I want to go to my public school. And we would talk to them and say, look, if you go to O'Connell, you're going to have a new group of friends. And you're always going to have your old group of friends, but you want to have a new group of friends. And
Especially moving into a 55 and over community where everyone is like-minded, as opposed to the neighborhood you're living in now, where you can't really make friends because you're around a new family who's just starting up and you feel kind of awkward. So you go into a 55 and over where everyone's in the same position.
they talk the same talk, they have the same memories, they came from the same generation. Yeah, Billy, you want to be around, so you have your old friends, but then you have new friends that you can make, and they're more age-centric to who you are and what you're doing.
I've had neighbors of mine sell their houses, buy or rent even a condominium or a much smaller condominium, like say Reston.
Yeah.
A 2-bedroom, 1 or 2 bedroom place that they
Mhm.
come in, and they actually moved down to Florida.
Right.
So they moved down to Florida principally, but they maintained a residence in this area.
Right.
So it's because their kids were living there.
Right. So
Yeah, you don't want to
go
live where
back
your
to-
kids are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, what else we got, Tommy? We good for today? What else is on
Most
your
of the
list?
has been
We beat this list to death.
try to come in on some of these.
Emails, assets, POA versus that, 4 levels, long-term care. I think that's good. If we don't have any questions coming in on Facebook, do we have anything? Did anybody shoot anything? I see Morgan's
We have
telling me
some
she loves me.
Comments, but
Okay.
no questions.
Do you have some comments or questions?
No questions, just people.
Commenting?
Yeah, so.
Okay. Any legal to put on the air?
No.
All right, so that's it for today. We will be back we're going to do a financial edition once a month. So I've got Coffee with Casey once a month. And that'll be about normal, what's hot, what's not, the pricing and everything else you need to know about real estate. And then we're going to do a financial one, and whether we bring in a estate planner, or not a estate attorney next time, we bring in somebody from assisted living care, and the next steps where you can go.
One other place that we may want to also consider bringing in, because it's a hot topic right now, is taxes.
Yeah.
So we may bring in a CPA
Yeah.
that will deal with the changing tax law.
Right.
I'll bring a pillow. Wait a minute, I thought we could fill out our taxes on a postcard. I thought, what?
That's Ted Cruz.
Huh?
That's
Ted Cruz?
Yeah.
Well, but we will have things to do with kind of that old, the elderly, working with the elderly, selling off their assets, how to deal with them. I think today's show was good. Just in a recap, it's funny. When I was doing it when I was younger and I did a seminar, some little old man came up to me and goes, "Let me tell you something, Sonny." He goes, "Tell him what you're going to tell him, then tell him what you told him." And it's the only way to go. And I'm like, "All right, little old man." And as he walked away, and I'm like, "God, that makes pretty damn good sense, So at first, when we're young, we're so smart. We are so smart. We know everything, right? But then as you get older, you realize, I don't know anything, So anyways, I'm going to tell you what we told you we're going to tell you. Now we told you, now I'm going to tell you what we told you. The main topics that we have today are how to work with a financial advisor, how to get the assets in trusts so you can have control of those trusts, power of attorneys will let you have a power of attorney of your parents' assets, how to deal with your parents, not push, pull. And it's kind of like, not,
Give them
mommy want to go buy my car.
Give them choices.
It is give them choices, just like you would looking with your kids to college.
Let's say,
Go out, let's get comfortable, let's see where your friends live, let's go visit them, spend some time out where they live, look at the kind of assets. Understand the difference between the premium that your parents are paying, and that premium, if cashed in, could be the assets they need to generate the income, which lets them have the lifestyle that they want and they stop worrying about it, okay? We learned about long-term care where, a lot of these people that we're dealing with are concerned they're gonna run out of money. But if you 50-somethings or 40-somethings or whatever, now 60-somethings, if you want to, while you're in the middle of making your money, put the money into long-term care, that makes good sense, and not the, why do I keep missing out the word that you use? Indemnity.
Yeah.
Not the indemnity
Asset-backed
program.
versus
An asset-backed, long-term care program,
Right.
right? Which has a lot more benefits, and you got to talk to Tom about that. Again, Tom Clark in Vienna, Virginia. Just go to the Vienna Inn for breakfast. You see him anytime. He's got these goofy-looking sport goggles that he wears in there sometimes, but you can see him pretty much every morning at the Vienna Inn having breakfast. You go there every morning?
No, 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5 days you go in there, have all your meetings?
And if you want to see me, I close the inn down. You can get me in there in about from 10 to midnight.
So if you're an early morning person, you can talk to Tom. If you're a late night guy, you can talk to Billy.
There you
Can
go.
I give him one last story?
What?
Okay. I read this thing about Mark Twain, who was known as Samuel Clemens. Samuel Clemens, when he was 18 years old, left his family's house and his father and mother because he wanted to make it out on his own. And he used to get in arguments with his dad all the time about things. And finally couldn't take it anymore. He said, "I'm leaving. I'm going away." So he went on a trip, and he went away for a year. Worked on his own and so forth. Came back a year later. Now he's 19. He says he started talking things over with his dad. He said it was amazing to him how much his father learned in a year.
Yeah, I know. Let me tell you something. Look, and again, I said earlier that my dad had passed at 59, and you know, till the day he died, we're like, right, Dad, right. And it's funny when it's a Big Fish story. Go watch the movie Big Fish. As things went on, it's like, damn, he really did know. I mean, he did know all these famous people, and he did do all these good things, and the stuff that he says resonates. So I guess for the parents, if you think your kids aren't listening, they're listening, but they're just not going to get it till later on. You know, they definitely hear you, and they'll definitely put whatever you said to use later on in their life, so don't get frustrated with them, although I am lucky now. I do want to just duly noted that I did give a passionate speech about my wife before the sound was working
you did.
today. I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
And I thank my lovely wife for producing all these beautiful children and such a great family. She took such good care of me, and she's lived with me all this time. God love her.
Family's
Can
so
you
important.
imagine having to live with me? I can't even live with myself. I don't. Sometimes I talk so much, I can't watch a football game with myself. So Kevin will get up and walk out. It's like, I wish I could walk out on myself, but I can't. I'm stuck with me. But God love her. You know, I appreciate what you did last night and our whole life, and you know, to go out with such wonderful people. Thanks, honey.
Is this your plea for her to take care of you whenever you get?
I just know it. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
Casey, want to go buy back our car? All right, guys, that's sign off for today. This is Coffee with Casey Financial Edition. I have Tom Clark here from Blue Ocean Partners in Vienna on Pine Street. And then Billy Samson, our stud, and it is wild how worlds collide, in that Zach Clark, the smartest kid you're ever going to meet, was my quarterback back in '94, until Billy Samson comes along in 2001, and then he's my quarterback, and literally the two of the smartest kids that I've ever met, and that's why we're lucky to have Billy here with us. And as we go along, you know, anyone that has these real estate issue problems, one of the reasons I brought Billy in, because I couldn't get Zach to. Zach was on Wall Street, but I did get Billy. But if you do have these real estate related issues,
Or a life transition problem.
life transition problems, give us a call. We have plenty of experience with it, and we'd be happy to help you. All right? Leslie, thank you very much for our
Leslie.
Facebook Live. It was wonderful. We will do it again, I guess, in a couple weeks. And then we'll do this financial edition once a month. If you have any questions you want answered, if you have parents, if you have any issues, let us know. Next show, we'll be happy to get them on, or just send me an email at casey@caseysamson.com or Billy at Billy@Billysamson. That would be, you don't have a Billy.
I'm already
at
setting up my
Casey
own group. I'm just kidding.
Samson? All right, send it to me. Don't send it to Billy.
Yeah, don't send it to me.
We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Peace.